captain right now. Hey, the captain of the ship.
Okay, so obviously the audio of that footage was absolutely filled with copyrighted music. So I thought, you know what, let's replace that audio with some beautiful royalty-free lo-fi beats and then go over a quick analysis at the end to hopefully provide some level of, edutainment, as they say in the YouTube buzzwords category. So if we scroll down here, you can see this graph was the story of a pretty accurate game, 95% accurate from me, but 86% accurate from the captain of our ship there. So by no means, a very inaccurate game, but there was one clear blunder here. C takes d4, pretty obviously that led to the inevitable demise of their position, but 95% accuracy, I'll take it. I believe my mistake was not taking d4 with queen. Anyway, let's really quickly go through the game. E4, knight to f6, Alakai's defense, knight c3, d5. Basically, either you take or you push. You push here and you get into some kind of French defense. And if you take, as we saw, you get into the Scandinavian variation where you can trade this off, although that tends to be very pleasant for black. So instead, bishop c4 played by my opponent, which is actually the top master move in this position. Takes and then b takes, which is not 100% accurate. I think the best move is actually queen to f3, which is kind of reminiscent of an intermezzo scotch, basically removing the queen from d1 with tempo of checkmate, so that after we play e6, you can then take back like this, develop the dark square bishop, castle queenside probably, or maybe go bishop d2 so you can actually castle queenside, and then have a beautiful rook on the d file with the king protected by a bunch of pawns. You could also probably take back with the queen and have a nice position there without the pawn damage. But obviously we saw b takes, and here this is kind of familiar, or the structure I was thinking about was, I think, a Grunfeld structure, in which eventually, I believe, there's this structure that you go like this, castle and play c5 against, because the point is, after we go for this fianchetto castle and then play c5, you absolutely cannot take. You absolutely cannot take, because then we take here, and this very soft c3 pawn, obviously play b takes c3 and then push this pawn. That c3 square has no structural stability, and we are going to be able to pick up a rook with this nasty fork here. And if you don't take, we can basically continue to mount pressure, as I did by playing bishop g4. Now, this isn't mounting pressure in the most obvious way in terms of adding an attacker to the d4 square. We are rather removing a defender of that square by immobilizing this knight, pinning it to the queen such that maybe we're threatening to take, and if knight takes, then of course we would take that queen. So after h3, I thought, you know what? Generally speaking, you don't want to just go pin a knight and then take it with a bishop. That's bad practice in general, because, for instance, my light square bishop could have been a very nice long-range attacking piece, maybe on b7, whereas this knight might not have had any maneuverability. However, I thought that this was tactically justified, because after queen takes, there is only one defender left of this pawn, and we are attacking it 3 times here, with the bishop as well from g7. So here I decided to take, and this is where the absolutely detrimental mistake of the game was made. You cannot be recapturing here. My queen and bishop are just too strong. Now, the mistake I made, because I was fixated on that idea of forking the king and rook like we talked about just then with the bishop, is that I just sort of tunnel vision and thought, oh, okay, we can do the same thing, but on d4 now. Instead, I could have played queen takes, and after the king moves, or for instance, we see bishop e3 most likely, we can then take the bishop. Now, a free bishop is almost certainly better than just being up in exchange. Also, this rook's still hanging, but also our bishop is still beautiful, and there will never be any dark square problems. But this is one of those mistakes which you can very much afford to make, because after bishop here, we just trade, go knight c6, prevent any loss of the pawn on b7, and after f5, a very aggressive move and a really nice attacking idea, trying to break me open. They do still have a bishop pair. Unfortunately, they will not have a bishop pair after knight to e5. We attack the queen. Queen has to move, trade that off, get rid of the bishop pair. We don't have to worry so much about the c4 bishop, which was a very stressful piece to think about. Rook c8, activate that rook with tempo, the queen goes back, and b6, just solving the problems of these pawns both being hanging. And after they go rook to f1, we went queen c7, and here I sort of calculated this. After queen c7, I thought about bishop here, and funnily enough, I can't move my rook, because after pawn takes, let's say I don't know, let's say I take back like this, we get checkmated. I mean, our pieces are just over here looking stupid, and our opponent's attack has paid off. So what we basically can't do is allow this pawn to take here, because even if we don't take back, we're getting torn open like this, and it would be completely over on f7. So we can't move the rook. However, I'd calculated that after queen takes, rook takes, we've won another pawn, we were already one pawn up, and an exchange up. So here, when I lose the exchange like this, and then we trade off another couple of pawns, it's kind of irrelevant. We're still 2 pawns up, but this time we are in a trivially winning rook and pawn endgame. The reason why I say it's trivially winning is because, I mean, first of all, our rook's better. There's no problem with rook activity, and I mean, immediately we see the rooks traded anyway to preserve this a2 pawn. However, we have a pawn majority on this side and a pawn majority on the king side as well. We can even march these pawns up probably straight away, create a pass pawn and try and promote. And if the king goes across and deals with that, then we can go and take these pawns. It's just too much for white to handle. Instead, I decided to get 2 pass pawns in the center, bring the king in, and then go for a6 to try and create a pass pawn on that side, waiting for the pawn to come forward on the other side of the board. King g5, take the pawn. It is now 4-on-1, and just push our passed pawn to queening. a5, check, beautifully held by the a6 pawn, and then we can just pick this up. And now, I mean, it is absolutely worst case scenario a draw, but if you draw this, you should play checkers for the rest of your life. The king moves, and we employed a very inefficient mating technique, but one which is really instructive and really systematic, which I really like, the knight's shadow technique with queen and king. The reason I say this is inefficient here is because we have the ability to just create another queen. We do not need to be trying to get technical with the queen that we do have. We could just ladder mate. This would not be hard. Instead, we basically restrict where this king can go, either forcing it back to one of these 2 squares, c7 or e7, or goes across. After it does go across, we can do this again, giving it the same options. Eventually, it will run out of options to keep going across, and we force back. Opponent just went for that preemptively. Queen b6, again, cutting the king off even further. King goes back, queen c7, just staying this knight's shadow away, this knight's silhouette away from the queen, and it is now entombed forever in a 4x1 coffin here, from which it will never escape. We make that a 3x1 coffin, and then a 2x1 coffin. Importantly, not a 1x1 coffin, because this, of course, would be stalemate, so, you know, remember that when using this technique. But now the king is just left to hopelessly oscillate back and forth, as I've said before, like a depressed Newton cradle. And I mean, we can bring the king in and checkmate on g7, or we can promote to a knight, bring the knight in, and then instead of going knight f6 straight away and stalemating, waste a move with the pawn, so the king has to come back here, so we can go check here and checkmate. I've just realized I'm still wearing the bandana that I was wearing outside because it is like 38-degree heat. I promise I don't think I'm Tupac. This is not... I'm not re-recording all of that. I'm going to take it off now though. Oh, maybe I should have left it on. The trim is not looking in great health. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm still in Greece. I'll be back in the UK very soon, and I will start cranking out the daily content again. But hopefully, for the meanwhile, while I'm on holiday, you've enjoyed this little snippet here, this little video. Thanks very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.